Hello. If we take a quick look, this is the opening screen you get when you open Tableau Desktop. On the left side, you'll see that you can connect to data, and it will ask you what kind of data or server, data sources you want to connect to. Most frequently, we use files, and they have different types: the Excel file, text file like a CSV, a JSON file, a PDF, spatial, statistical, and more. And if you click on more, right, you can choose any kinds of file. And if you connect to different types of servers, you have the SQL Server, Redshift. You can also find that there are a number of other options for you. Web Data Connector, Google Analytics, Google Ads, Salesforce I think is in here, Salesforce. So you have a lot of options for connecting to data. And so when you start with Tableau, the first thing you do is connect to data. So you have a wide range of flexibility. It's important to understand how Tableau connects to data and what that means. So, in our example, let's say I want to connect to a Microsoft Excel file. And this is a sample data set known as Hurricane. So I'm going to click on it and open it. Then I get to this screen that examines my data source. You'll see each sheet in my Excel file listed. You can click on each one. And if you go here, you can actually view the data and preview it. So here, what we see is that one sheet examines seasons and only 7 rows. That's probably not the data set we want. If we view data here for hurricanes, this is the data set we want, 7,000 plus rows, and these are the rows that actually record data. So you can always take a look in here and get some insight as to what's in your data set. Okay. So when we connect to data, I'll take Hurricane, and let's say that's the sheet that I want. I just drag the Hurricane data sheet over here into this area, and that data set shows up. Now, we'll also notice that Tableau is pretty smart, and it will categorize data in a number of ways. So, for example, dates are often coded as dates. It's very rare that Tableau gets confused, but sometimes it does. Categories is numerical data. Basin is text. And we'll notice we go here. Latitude has a little globe on it. That is categorized as geographical data. Notice that longe, which is the longitude, the degrees of longitude of the hurricane landing. Notice that Tableau got a little confused here and categorized it as a number. And so one of the things we can do is we see I can categorize it in here, and I can say, you know, that's not a number, that's geographic data. So I can actually just click on the symbol, and I can change the data type. So if it's a whole number and not a decimal, if it's a date and time, I can fix it. But here we would see geographic role, and we have a number of geographic roles, right, that Tableau recognizes. And we know that this is longitude, so we can change it right here. And so now the data set will be categorized as longitude, as geographic data. There you go. If you ever need to undo, Tableau is also pretty smart. And we can just use this back button, which is undo. If we need to redo it, we can use the forward button, redo. I'm going to undo it because I'm going to show you another way to change that data set. This is the picture of the old floppy diskette. The 3.5 diskette is the save button. And this refresh button here, this refresh data source. Okay, it's important to make these two considerations. I'm going to point them out here, and it's pointed out in text in your class. One, when Tableau connects to a data source, okay, that's a connection. And you see how we have a choice here, up here in the right panel, or this right section, where it says connection can be live or extracted, right? Live or extracted. A live connection means that we create an ongoing connection to a data source, and when we change that data source, those changes will be reflected in Tableau. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. If I use an extract, what it's going to do is you import that data into Tableau's fast data engine, and the extract's created when you click on a sheet tab, and what that means is it snapshots that data at that moment in time. Okay? At that moment in time. So a live connection is great if you're looking at regular updates to the data source. So let's say you have a grading sheet for all of your students at a school over time, and you're looking at student grade achievements over that period of time, and you're adding new records every week or every semester or every year. Okay, you'll want that live connection because that will automatically update your visualizations and the work that you've done in Tableau based on the work that you've done to your data set. So as you update, so if you're using a spreadsheet, a live data source to reflect ongoing sales in your business, or employee achievement in other results, and you're always adding and adding and adding, or you make changes in that live data source, this live connection means that it will update the data in Tableau automatically. And the easiest way to do that is you just click that refresh button and it updates. So that's important to note, because when you get, let's say I've pulled this, I'm happy with the live connection, and now I want to start working with my data. So then I click on this button known as Sheet 1. So that's a worksheet, and worksheets are a common way of expressing a workspace in Tableau. These are different types of worksheets, and this is where you create visualizations. Notice that Tableau breaks down into two major chunks or types, data categories. So the first we have are dimensions. The next we have are measures. Dimensions are categorical data, like names or places, geographical places, that sort of thing. A lot of times these would be titles or names you'd put in rows. Measures are things that are countable, and you're going to count them. You're going to have numerical data associated with them, and those are measures. Now, Tableau is not always right in its automatic or default choice of what's a dimension and what's a measure, and you can easily change that. So, for example, if I wanted a category to be a dimension, I would just grab this little circle, and this is often called a pill because it looks like a big pill of Tylenol or whatever, and you just drag it and move it up to dimensions, and now that's a dimension. But it should be in measures, so we'll keep it down here. And vice versa. Let's say year in dimensions needs to be down in measures. We can drag that down. Very easy. If we want to rename any of these things, we can. Now, the second big part of how Tableau connects to data. And here's the flips, the other part of this. So we've talked about what happens if I change my data source and how it impacts your work in Tableau. A lot of people automatically ask or wonder, if I change a title or some things in Tableau, how does that affect the original data connection I've made, the source data? It doesn't. So when you work in Tableau, that work stays in Tableau. So I guess it's the software equivalent of going to Vegas, if the commercials were correct before COVID made us stay at home. What happens in Tableau, in this case, will stay in Tableau. So, for example, let's say we wanted to rename these categories to things that are more user-friendly. Like, instead of lat deg, or meaning latitude degrees, which is great for, say, a data pull that you put into a Excel or a CSV file, we want something that's going to be usable by our data consumers, our end users. So I can just do one of two things. I can hold my click on it, which opens this up and I can edit it, or I can just click on there's a little arrow or chevron that pops up when I hover over the pill on that side. I click on it, I go to rename. And I'm just going to write this as latitude. And I go here for longitude, and I do, oh, I didn't want to hide. Notice how I was able to use the undo button. And I want to rename. Longitude. Not longitude, longitude. Okay. Now remember, we also have this data type problem because longitude is not a simple number. There's a geographic role here. So if I click on the symbol, once again, notice I get the same choices I had on the data source sheet. And I know this is a longitude, so I select that. Now that's automatically selected. So it's pretty easy to get started in using data in Tableau and connecting to a data source. It's important to remember that if you were working with a data set, when you change material in that source file, so if it's an Excel file, if you change data in the Excel file and you have that live connection to Tableau, it will change your visualizations in Tableau. If you change it here, so I just changed latitude and longitude. Now let me open my source file. Notice in Tableau I've changed it here, it's been reflected here, right? But let's say I go here and I just want to look at my source data. Notice this didn't change. Lat, long. Okay? So, pretty powerful, pretty easy to use, and these are the simple things that get you started. In our next set of exercises, we'll actually start making our first visualizations and start actually using one of the most important and powerful features in Tableau and one of the most essential, and that's data filtering.